Rob, let's talk about consolidating and upgrading when it comes to watch collecting. I know it's something that I like doing. I seem to ride a roller coaster when it comes, well, to a few things, but mostly number of watches in the collection. Like sometimes I balloon up and then I'm like, man, I need to purge. I've got way too many. I can't enjoy them all. And I'll trade or sell like 4 or 5 at a time and usually replace those with a higher value watch. And then number wise, I go back down, and then it's like a wave, sometimes. Have you ever done that?
All the time.
Okay.
And I would venture to say most collectors do that because, I mean, there are those collectors that will be very analytical and they'll
methodical about it, adding.
If it's not, if it doesn't check this box on the spreadsheet, it doesn't get bought or it doesn't go into the watch box. And then there's other people like you and me that it's like, hey, check that out. That's got a cool color, band. I think I'm going to buy it.
Right.
And it's like just random stuff that'll pop in, and you already know, like, I probably I'm not going to keep that, but it's going to be fun while I've got it.
I can tell you, when I was earlier in my watch collecting journey, I probably got to a couple dozen watches, mostly affordable. And then I hit this point where I'm like, wow, if I would have saved the amount that I spent on all these watches, I could have bought this one lovely Rolex or Omega or Tudor Grand Seiko, and you start to see, where am I putting the value in?
Yep.
Am I buying 10 different watches? Am I buying one? And I think depending on where you're at in your collecting journey, either option could be more appealing to you. And I'm glad that I've been everywhere in between. I've had the experience of a watch heavy collection that has awesome variety and whatnot, and then times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to purge and I'm going to buy a Vacheron Constantin, and I'm only going to have 3 or 4 watches.
Yeah, I remember when you did that. You only had, I think it was like 3
Yeah,
or 4.
I had the Hulk, I had the Overseas, I had the Speedy, and then I bought a Panerai, and then I went back up on the roller coaster. So it's fun. I don't know.
I'm right there with you. I have done the kind of, like you say, the wave up and down. I actually think it's natural. I really do. I don't think it's outside of the norm, regardless of how long you've been in the hobby, to be somewhere on the scale, whether you're climbing back up because there's been a bunch of cool micro brand releases. I mean, we know a guy locally, shout out to John, that guy will buy the most random micro brand, and then he'll sprinkle in like a Milgauss.
Yeah.
So he's all over the spectrum.
And his own watch brand.
And his own. He's like, I'm going to start my own brand, which, by the way, is a freaking amazing watch.
It is.
But it's like he's all over, and he's been in the game longer than we've been in the game.
Oh, by years.
You know, and so I truly think it's just a natural part of the hobby. You find things that speak to you. You find things that have significant meaning, whether it's a birthday, an anniversary, whatever.
Yeah.
And you kind of gather, and then you get to that stage where you're like, do I need this? Let's be a little bit more minimal, and then you sell a bunch, trade a bunch.
It's kind of like spring cleaning to a degree.
Exactly. I had a situation today, actually. I won't say the dealer, but I had a situation where I found a watch
that you wanted.
I have wanted this watch since the day it was announced.
Okay.
And I've seen it in person. I already know there's no surprise about I don't know if I'm gonna.
You will love this watch.
I have had this wrist. I have had it on my wrist, and I've looked at this going, yeah, this is as good, actually better than I thought.
Yeah.
And it is not an expensive, it is a relatively expensive.
It's a luxury watch.
It's a luxury watch. And so I had a situation today where I put out a few options for a dealer. I thought I was more than fair. He had different numbers in his mind. I had different numbers in my mind.
I know how that goes.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people can relate.
And we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and ultimately it didn't work. I can understand needing meat on the bone from their side, but I also understand what I do and how I value my collection. And I got to a point where the numbers just were too far apart.
But also you got to weigh in the emotional. Like,
yes,
this watch, which I know you love, versus the 3 or
I had
two.
4. I had upwards,
4.
Yeah,
okay.
I had upwards of 4.
So you had 4 watches that you've liked, but you're okay letting go with, versus one killer heavy hitter.
I know.
And it's like, all right, I know I'm taking a loss, but is the other watch enough to placate me losing some money?
I know, and that is an internal
It's the
question.
conundrum, right?
Yes, it is. And had it been, I feel like a little bit closer, I would have been okay with the numbers being off.
Yeah.
It was just too far of a gap.
Gotcha.
And I could be completely in the wrong in my evaluation on one of my watches, and that's fine. But I feel like I know what I've got. It's one of the 4 watches is a pretty rare piece. It is very, very niche, but it is pretty rare, and we could not agree on that one piece, and so that was kind of the breaking point, if you will.
So next week when we get together to film, you're gonna have already pulled the trigger and be wearing the watch. I hope.
Oof, man! I tell you what, I do plan on reaching out to the dealer in a couple days if the watch is still available. I'm highly skeptical that it will be available, but if it is, I'll reach out. Maybe see if we can bridge that divide, because I do think
I'm pulling for you.
There is something that you said there that rang a lot, or that made a lot of sense of like this one watch that you've identified and that you really, really want.
Zeroed in on.
And I truly have been in awe of this watch. It actually struck me when I saw this watch in person. So I see that and I go, oh, versus 4 really, really cool watches. Like, there's nothing wrong with the watches that I'm proposing to trade. I would be perfectly fine keeping them, but I also do feel like I don't have that same...
You don't have that same connection, right?
same connection with this one. So
let me end on this, Rob. This was a topic posted by our friend John, who sells us watches at our local AD. He asked collectors that follow him what topics they would like to hear about. And so this is from one of his followers, and it is why watch collectors should just buy what they want and stop sweating so hard. Here we've spent the past 5 minutes talking about this, oh, should I do this? I don't want to do it. Buy what you really love, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
There's some serious truth there.
All right, I guess we just got to stop sweating so hard.
There we go.
Cool.